Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Well, the title today is kind of a long title. It's, of course, dealing with Black History Month. Today is February the 20th. Tomorrow will be technically Martyrs Day. And we call it Martyrs Day because Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, February 21st, 1965, he was martyred. So we include him and all the other martyrs in that day. And last month was Martin Luther King's birthday, which was the 15th of January. And this carries a long title, but a psychological, historical overview, that is, of Masjid al-Islam in Oakland. And the other title has to do with, we'll call that School Days, D-A-Z-E. And that may be really the main title, because some of the things that I'm going to talk to you about today relate to that Spike Lee type movie and the attitude of the people during that era. When we think about Oakland, of course, Oakland, the people who were managing things in Oakland in the earlier years was exactly from that era of School Days. And I think School Days was made sometime in the mid-'80s. Was that the mid-'80s?
Yeah.
Okay, that was the mid-'80s. So everybody, the management in Oakland was of age at that time, and Oakland happens to have been one a little different from here. Oakland was more of they had went through the educational university process in Oakland, whereas here it was more of a working class historical Islamic movement. Some of the people here had been part of the older movements, and the Dar al-Islam movement, some of them, or everybody was aware of that. An Islamic Party, especially some of the brothers that was very active here, had been a part of the Islamic Party. Many of the people who, even over on A Street, came there had a longer historical Islamic a picture of things. Of course, D.C. had been through a lot of struggles because of its central location in the United States. So, now all of this hit me this morning. That's why I got here a few minutes late. I changed the subject a little bit, well, almost completely, because it struck me that this was the type of thing to talk about now. And also because of, we're in a different transition now, and we're moving ahead, but we have to clean up a lot of the things that came along with us. So, the reason we call this School Days, because we have to look at the people. When we think about Oakland, Oakland has a look of tragedy to it. There's a lot of tragic, a lot of comic, but a lot of black historical things that surface there, and I recognized it right away, and that's why we want to think about it as School Days, because School Days, I didn't see the whole movie, but from what I understand, it had a lot to do with educated people, light-skinned, black-skinned, right? And
The whole college, black college life at that time.
and that's why I call it school days, because the crew in Oakland came through that.
Right.
And they brought with them all of that, and their outlook, when they looked at you, when they looked at the movement, when they looked at everything, they reflected that. So I want you to bear with me as we go along through this. And the way I have it written here, I'm going to just go right down the line. And I'm going to start with Sister Bahia. Sister Bahia was married years ago to Abdul Malik, and Sister Bahia was also later on married to a brother who was a captain, or he was in the military, and they were stationed in Portugal. He was one of the main functionaries for Stokely Carmichael's All-African Revolutionary People's Party or something like that. He used to do a lot of running for him, a lot of traveling for him. And so I used to talk to Sister Bahia about it a little bit, and the way they talked about it is that the sisters in the party were mainly kind of semi-good looking, and they were there to service the brothers. And I'm not saying the early black movement, but if it had any youth in it at all, I don't care whether it's the Black Panther Party, I just go back to Oakland. One of the sisters was in charge in picking up one of the leaders from the Black Panther Party. She eased over to his house to pick him up. She was supposed to get him at a certain time. And that Negro chased that sister around the house for sex for over half an hour. Finally, they went on to the meeting. And this is a well-known fact that bumped the meeting. You know, I want to have, now, you got to remember our movement in those days, or that part of the movement, or that part of the movement that was linked to especially the so-called influenced by education crew. So Abdul Malik, who had been married to Sister Bahia, they had a son at that time. He was about 10. He's full grown now, boy, I tell you. So at that time, Abdul Malik was trying to get Sister Bahia to come to Oakland. The reason he wanted her to come to Oakland is because he had enough sense to know that he was at the center of the movement. And because he was there, you know, kind of like the assistant imam and everything, he knew that he was at the center of the movement. And Sister Bahia was part of the AR, whatever it was. And they were dying. And it's true. He knew that the future of Islamic movement, or the movement, was right where I was. He already knew that. I mean, you know the environment, you can tell. It don't make nobody a genius because they can tell where they are. So he talked to her and conned her for a long time. Finally, she left that person and came out to Oakland. And then they pretended to get married, whatever it was, so they got married, and they began to, she became Abdul Malik's second wife. Okay, in the meantime, Abdul Malik was always telling me I could be working out, or I could be doing anything, and he would be telling me, man, yeah, she's gonna make somebody a good wife. Because the way he was presenting it to me is, he's not getting along, something like that, you know. Or something just ain't right. But she's a nice person, and he had brought her there to marry me. And listening to me, he thought that he had a picture of just the type of woman I would want to marry, you know. Now, in the meantime, I got married to another lady. I didn't stay married no more than, must have been a month or two, about 2-3 months, because she had been associated with the Nation of Islam a lot, and it just wasn't working out. It wasn't going to work out. So I did what my crew, technically I just divorced her 3 times. I said, okay, I'm going back to D.C. I divorced you, I divorced you, I divorced you. And I haven't seen her again. I might have saw her one time, you know. But anyway, Abdul Malik was glad because he had brought Sister Bahia there for me to marry her. Because Abdul Malik considered himself a little manipulator. So he was manipulating all Oakland to surround me, where I would be the figurehead, but he would be managing everything. And then the government said everybody, like when things, everybody in Oakland gave me bail, but when Abdul Malik left, they left with him. They left with him. So it was all a charade. Now, don't worry. I was well aware of everything I was dealing with. And I want to take everybody back to 1986. And I can remind you that an accordion folder and other things were stolen from the Masjid where I used to sleep. And in that folder, I had these type of notes. And I had a few books of those. It said 4 notebooks. Because I had to, just like last night, all this writing, but I transferred most of that to this. So I have several sets of what I have. Like I have this right here, and then I copy it in a notebook, or, you know, I copy it better. Because half the time I'm laying down sleep, you know what I mean? And I wake up, I sleep with a pen and a clipboard. So you can tell all of this is the way it's written, that I was laying there when I wrote this down. And it only makes sense to me. But no, this is important. Right. I'm gonna tell you. They call it ideas, and things are slippery fish. That's what the white man called them. So you have to sleep if you're in a leadership position and you get inspiration all the time. You have to have a pen and paper right next to you, because soon as they come to you, you have to wake yourself up and write it down. You know what I mean? Because when you get up, it's gone. Right. Or it's not all the way gone, and bits and pieces of it will come back. But the way it hits you right then, right, you have to write it down right then. So you can recollect exactly what, so anyway, these are notes and that hit me last night, and I had to, that's why I was a few minutes late. Okay, and I was going to have a different lecture and a different talk. Now, I will give this repeat on Tuesday. And Tuesday will be, I think, the 22nd. Yeah, Tuesday will be the 22nd. Actually, that's my birthday. I'll be 77 years old. Okay, and you're talking about happy to arrive here. If you notice in our talks, we always talked a lot about longevity and protractedness. I can't say enough about protractedness because what we're doing, I've had time to visualize what's happening, and I've had several waves of being able to implement plans and actions that would cause the other people around to react in a certain way. This has happened over and over and over again. This is because of longevity. This is why, if anyone notices, our forecasting is, although I'm getting older, it's getting better, not worse. You know, when you get a little older, you start to forget little things. That's not happening. Right now, it was kind of clear maybe around 10 years ago or so when I was forecasting certain things that the movement was getting ready to go through. And bam, I'm talking about it happened step by step. And nobody else in the United States, or technically in the world, even they wasn't focused on that. But it was during the Arab Spring, as they was calling it. And I said right here many times, there ain't gonna be no Arab Spring. You can forget it. No Arab Spring. You remember that? Don't forget it. No Arab Spring. You can go on home and mind your own business. It ain't gonna be none. Okay? But then I said certain things were gonna happen. Now let me get back to you know, Sister Bahia's husband was Stokely Carmichael's functionary. I don't know how they could mix up joining the military. They were stationed in Portugal, and so I said, "Oh, you stay? How long is that? Is that somebody?" I said, "Oh, how's your Portuguese?" Because she didn't know any Portuguese. I said, "Okay, that means that they wasn't interested. That means the movement. They wasn't interested in, you know, if you're going to be there a couple of years." But she did have no fajma, something, no problem. That was it. So you would have to have absolutely no contact with the people of Portugal, or no interest in the historical process. Because Portugal is what that, in those days, Portugal was a center, one of the centers of colonialism.
Right.
Portugal had not only the center, but ever since the time of Vasco da Gama. I don't know if y'all remember Vasco da Gama in 1498. Vasco da Gama, well, since I didn't mention it, I don't want to stray, but I'll put it like this. And I was going to say this later, but in 1453, anybody remember what happened then? Fatih at Constantinople. He conquered Constantinople. That means that the so-called West was cut off from the East. They had to go through Ottoman territory. Everybody else classifies that as a big victory for the Muslims. It was a big victory, but it had the seeds of the destruction of the Ottoman Empire. It's a big victory. Why was that? Since they cut off the way to get to the east, what did everybody else do? The age of exploration, 1492, Columbus sailed ocean blue in 1492, sailing west to try to get to the east, because they had been taught by the Muslims that the world was round. Right?
No.
Okay. Vasco da Gama, Portugal, Spain, Portugal was big at that time. Vasco da Gama in 1898 starts sailing around Africa. And that's why you get Angola on this side, and you sail around and you get Mozambique, Musa bin Bake on the other side, right? So when Portugal finished up, it had 500 years of colonial history in Africa. And he sailed around Africa and found out, oh, India is right over there, right? That's right over there, right? The age of exploration. The English, Magellan and all of them, since the Ottoman Empire controlled the access, you know, they would come from Arabia, they would go up to what's now the Suez Canal, or, you know, and they would cross into Europe. So the trade was interrupted for them. Not for the Muslims, but for them. So they said, they went out, and why was that the beginning of the end for the Muslim? Because number one, instead of camel trade and all of that, now they can load all that stuff on big ships and sail around, right? So there's a difference between a caravan and a boat.
Right, see.
A caravan is very expensive and a boat is too, but the boat gonna carry more, right? And the conquest of Constantinople was the beginning of the end for us. It was a big victory, but it also opened the door to the death of the caliphate there. Okay, so I said that to talk a lot about the historical process that has a lot to do with black history, it has a lot to do with us, and it has a lot to do with where the world is now. Because remember, the Ottomans ruled for about 500 years, you know, and they were known as the sick man of Europe for a long time. That meant it was crumbling. The old empire was getting